Hey everybody. So this is my second attempt on reading through the introduction of my thesis. I did the last one and I just want to see if I can read it through this time, and I might be a little bit more relaxed, hopefully, and when I go through it, it might just flow a little bit better and sound better. So yeah, this is obviously, like I said last time, there are these 4 parts to my thesis. There's the introduction, there's the historical review, there's the thesis proof, and there is the coda. And then, well, obviously I have an appendix and a bibliography, right? But so I'm going to be reading the introduction here. And yeah, I'm going to try to keep it conversational, but also hopefully from what is said here as far as content, it's academically rigorous and somewhat understandable, but I'm also going to be using metaphors in here a little bit. So let's see how it goes. So, introduction. I think my introduction is like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the introduction is like 3 pages. Okay, so let me just go ahead and start. And these are just front-sided. It's not front and back. All right. So introduction. And the context here is, I think I'm not just going to read this word for word. I'm going to put some other words on here because this starts with a quote. So W.V.O. Quine, Willard Van Orman Quine, once said that a curious thing about the ontological problem is its simplicity. It can be put in 3 Anglo-Saxon monosyllables. What is there? All right, and then this is my first footnote. So Quine, W.V.O., on what there is, Washington, D.C., Catholic University of America Philosophy Education Society, 1948. Probably will not read things that detailed going forward. Anyways, so then what I say is, so curious thing about the ontological problem is its simplicity. It can be put in 3 Anglo-Saxon monosyllables. What is there? And I say, well, what is there? Every academic must come to terms with this question. Even if one maintains a commonsensical ontology, everyone has an ontology. There are certain objects to which people ascribe existence, and paradoxically, certain objects to which people ascribe non-existence. Over the course of this paper, the definition of what it means to exist will be analyzed in terms of modes. Breaking up existence in this format is known as the study of modality. Modality is a broad-ranging field, and it has taken on many forms since its inception. In fact, as of late, there are 7 tentative divisions of this logic: conditional, epistemic, doxastic, and that has to refer to like beliefs, tense/temporal, dynamic, deontic. Deontic has to do with like duty, moral values, stuff like that, and alethic. The work at hand will analyze modality purely under the form of alethic logic. That is to say, the logic of possibility and necessity. And then I have 2 footnotes here. Footnote number 2 is, henceforth, otherwise stated, reference to modality will entail reference to alethic logic. And then here's footnote 3, is probably the first time where I become a little bit metaphorical. I don't mean to imply that alethic modality will be the only type of modality in the stadium, but that's alethic, sounds like athletic, that's why I did that. In using the term purely, I'm following Kant, and I mean for this to be taken as synonymously with non-empirically. That's what I mean by purely there, just non-empirically. So that's 2 and 3. Okay, so the rest of this paragraph. The argument that's being put forth is that by analyzing the concept of existence through the lens of modality, an agglomeration of proofs for God's existence will emerge that are both valid and sound. So I have 2 sort of footnotes on this as well. So footnote number 4, in academic literature, this reasoning is referenced by the family of modal ontological arguments for God's existence. Okay, and then footnote 5, it's important to note the distinction between an argument and a proof. An argument is less formal than a proof. This thesis is an informal argument for a formal proof. Obviously, this definition is insufficient, and I mean that, like technically I didn't give you a rigorous definition, but will serve the purposes of my point. For the rest of the prospectus, which is the introduction, that was what we called it when we were first turning it in, I will impose no such distinction as the purpose is comprehension and not formality. So formality is great, but if you can't understand it, it's not the best. So my purpose here is going to be comprehension, but hopefully we can be both rigorous and understood. So that was the first paragraph. Second paragraph. Okay, before jumping into the murky waters of modality, again, I'm using these metaphors here, it's appropriate to lather ourselves in the significance of this concept through history. So briefly to state it, the historical review will encompass advancement in 4 periods of humanity: Greek, medieval, modern, and contemporary epochs. The Greek era with respect to philosophy. Just out of breath there. The Greek era with respect to philosophy was the genesis of modality. Aristotle, the father of the syllogism, was also the father of the necessary and the possible. Following in his footsteps came the Megarian and Stoic schools, which carried on his noble tradition. So in the first video that I was talking about, when I talked about Diodorus, Cronus, and Chrysippus, they are going to embody in this thesis the Megarian and Stoic schools that followed Aristotle in Greek philosophy. And so following his footsteps came the Megarian and Stoic schools, which carried on his noble tradition, Aristotle's noble tradition. So from this family, the first inklings of what is now known as an ontological argument manifested themselves into the person of Diogenes of Babylon. So Diogenes of Babylon was among the people of this time period. I'm just not going to be talking about him. So footnote 6 is because of Diogenes' dwindling role of unimportance, I'm just being poetic there, he will not be given more than a gentle nod, and this is his gentle nod. I might talk about him a little bit more later, but that's very, very tiny. Okay, so after the Greek era, muse-like inspiration was combined with the progress from the Muslim world to instantiate in the work of St. Anselm of Canterbury. So most historians of theology credit this man with the foundations of the ontological argument. However, because of his poor performance with Guanello, and the fact that his work was eclipsed by that of St. Thomas, the medieval period is hailed as a sad time for the ontological argument. My approach hopes to avoid this tunnel vision method and move past traditional Anselmian hymns to a more vivid and engaging lyric that's not wholeheartedly flat. And what I mean by that is so many times when people are talking about the ontological argument, oh my gosh, it's just the same things over and over and over and over again. And it's literally like, let's learn the history and then just spit it right back out. And it's like, that approach isn't dynamic, it's not creative, it doesn't address all of what's being written. I guess it'd be okay to not have anything new to say if literally you are capturing the whole breadth of what there is. But when you're leaving out stuff like that, it leaves people without the emotion, and that's kind of what's missing here. So the last period before contemporary advancement was the modern era, and this time both modality and the ontological argument were progressed together. So Leibniz's notions of calculus alongside his ideas of possibility were highly influential. With Spinoza reworking the ontological argument before him and Frege building a logical framework to access modality after him, the modern era set the stage for contemporary advancements. And then lastly, out of the heart of process theology came the groundbreaking work of Charles Hartshorne, which I think I mentioned a little bit in that first introduction too. Although his visage, V-I-S-A-G-E, visage of the divine was lacking in the area of omniscience, I'm talking about him being a process theologian and his views about God's foreknowledge. Although his visage of the divine was lacking in the area of omniscience, his modal interpretations of Anselmian thought led the way for truly powerful advancements. And I say the most prominent theists to take on such reasoning were the realist mathematician Kurt Gödel and the nominalistic philosopher Alvin Plantinga. So with the likes of these men in mind, the reader is now equipped to participate in substantive discussions. So here's the thing. So that was the second paragraph. I know it's like pretty big, but first paragraph, second paragraph, and then third paragraph, and we should be good. So current discussions on modal ontological arguments. Oh, I actually have 2 more paragraphs, but they're both short. So third paragraph. Current discussions on modal ontological arguments are analogous to a set of proofs and rebuttals. I don't know why I said formal proofs. Proofs are formal. Okay. The proofs are mostly theistic by nature, whereas rebuttals can fall on either side. So now I go into footnote 7, and I say that the best theistic proofs stem from Plantinga and Madel, whereas the best atheistic critiques stem from Gale and Rao. Okay. So the major attacks, and I'm just going to give you some context here. I'm about to use some words that kind of just, they sound good, but basically each of these phrases is meant to capture an objection. So if these words don't make sense, it's because I'll expand on them more in the thesis proof and they'll become clear. But here's what I just say for now. The major attacks are based on the impossibility of divinity, the fallacy of question begging, the nature of necessity, and the validity of our modal intuition. Sorry, that's a mouthful. So to combat these objections, the works of 4 major players have sprung forth: Brian Leftow, Robert Madel, Alexander Proust, and Harvey Friedman. Past this, developments in the field involve more vague modal epistemic arguments such as those of Emmanuel Rutten. So the main purpose of stating both sides of the argument is to show the reader that the best attacks on the ontological argument are fatally flawed, and that the best rebuttals and attempts to support it are at least valid and sound. So yeah, that is the 3rd paragraph. Here's the 4th paragraph. From this epiphany, it's up to the reader to decide whether God exists. This thesis does not act as a mandate for belief in God's existence, but as a question. If there is a proof for the existence of God, that's ontologically valid and sound, why should we reject him? Is it the case that the proofs are not emotionally persuasive? And then this is where I become a little bit metaphorical and start talking about, I'll just go and start using experiments or the beauty of paintings. If logic doesn't matter, there's a bunch of stuff we can just throw out there. But here's how I say that poetically. I say, then I'll make myself a slave Then I will make myself a slave to the tradition of experimentalism, meaning our experiments, our scientific theories are what constitute truth, and arm myself with the sword of romanticism. I'm thinking here about art and the beauty of just poetry, but also paintings in general. So yeah, and music and all that good stuff. So if logical proofs don't matter, those are the areas where I'm going, because that's all that's left. Not to say that you can't have both of those at the same time, but I think you know what I mean. And I can talk about that more later. All right, so it is the case that, this is another question. Is it the case that the proofs are too sophisticated? And I say, well, what more did you expect when trying to unpack the God of the universe? Right? I mean, if we're talking about God, why would you expect this to be simplistic or overly simplistic, right? I mean, it's okay for there to be some things that are complicated as long as they're explained well. I'm giving a lot more commentary than I need to, but hopefully that'll be helpful, okay? So, if one refuses to accept a proof or respond with any quip of intelligence, then the conversation is over. Apologetics is done, and psychology has laid claim to this thread of the discussion. So yeah, that's the introduction. I didn't realize at this time when I wrote this, but how much I'd be able to learn about psychology and just some of the people that I would meet and my life experiences. But definitely psychology is still a good thing. But at this point, we're not there yet. We're talking about just logic and what is logically true and false. So thanks so much for listening, and have a great day. Bye.